Pod Candy,
a podcast about cults, crimes, and killers.
Today we're talking about Surviving Ohio State, the documentary that chronicles the abuse committed by Dr. Richard Strauss and the decades of silence and inaction from Ohio State University.
This is one of the largest sexual abuse scandals in U.S. history. Over 300 male athletes were victimized. The documentary doesn't sensationalize it. It lets the survivors speak. And what they say is devastating.
What struck me the most was the consistency of their stories. Across sports, across years, these men were all saying the same thing, that they were violated, that they tried to speak up, and that they were ignored.
The university failed them. Coaches failed them. Administrators failed them. There were clear warnings, there were patterns, and no one acted to stop it.
There's also the emotional toll. So many of these men talked about how they carried this for decades, in silence. The shame, the confusion, the isolation. This isn't just about what happened in an exam room. It's about what it did to their lives long after.
And it's important to acknowledge that this is a story about male survivors. That's something we don't talk about enough. There's stigma, there's fear, and in many cases like this one, there's a cultural expectation to just move on or tough it out.
The film also names people in positions of power who knew or should have known, including former coaches. It raises real questions about institutional responsibility and accountability.
This isn't just a story about one predator. It's a story about systems that protect power, reputation, and image over people, over truth.
For anyone listening, this documentary is not easy to watch, but it's necessary. It's a clear reminder of what happens when people look the other way, and of how long it takes for survivors to be heard.
And how brave it is to speak, to name what happened. These men didn't owe us their stories, but they told them, and that matters.
If you're a survivor or you're supporting someone who is, we'll have some resources linked in the show notes. You are not alone.
We see you, we believe you, and we'll keep paying attention.
Outside my window, it's only raining. When the wind blows, I feel pain. I don't need no doctor, baby, I'm not sick. My body's been locked up, heartbroken ever since.
First of all, I love all these guys. They're all just fantastic men. And, I'm sending my kid to college in a couple of weeks. You send your kid to college, and especially if they're an athlete. My son is not an athlete, but especially if they're an athlete, you send them there and you're like, they're going to be taken care of. Like, you don't in your mind think, oh, are they going to be abused or assaulted or, you don't think about that. You trust doctors. You trust who's in the exam room.
Dr. Strauss was our team doctor, and that's what we had. I mean, if we had an illness, he's the one we went to. If we needed medication for something, he's the one that we went to. If we had an injury, he's the one that we went to. And each and every time, it was a full body check that resulted in a genital check without fail. And the man never wore gloves. It was always skin on skin.
And these were children who didn't know what was happening to them was wrong. And when they felt uncomfortable and they brought it up to Russ, the main coach was Russ and the assistant coach, Jim Jordan.
Who was in Congress, Jim Jordan.
Who was in Congress. And if you watch this documentary, you'll be infuriated when you see that at first they bring Russ in and the men finally get a hold of him and he supports them. He says he's going to write a letter to the university supporting them. And then Jim Jordan gets a hold of him, doesn't want, he lies, and Jim knew. I mean, I've watched it twice. He knew. Everyone knew, as these men.
He made the comment to the referee guy, "Oh, that's just Strauss." When Strauss when a doctor was masturbating in the shower.
Dr. Strauss walks in the shower. He could have went anywhere, but he stood right beside me. The shower, I'm here, he's here. Okay, And the next thing I know, I look over and I realize he's not washing himself. He's masturbating. He's beside me masturbating. And I'm thinking, what the hell are you doing? He goes, "Oh, Fred, I'm just washing." Well, that's kind of a weird-ass way to do it, And I remember I kind of turned a little bit, and the next thing I know, I'm feeling his hand on my butt. And, I got dressed, didn't say a word to him. As I'm walking out, at the very end of that walkway, Russ Allison and Jim Jordan were both standing there. And I looked at both of them. I said, "Hey, Strauss is in there masturbating beside me in the shower." And both of them looked at me. Jim Jordan looked at me straight in my face and said, "It's Strauss. You know what he does." And Russ agreed.
And he's watching all in their locker rooms of all these Ohio State sports, men's sports. He has a locker in every single one of their locker rooms.
And what you'll come to learn is that this isn't just happening with the wrestlers.
The male gymnasts, their facility was in Larkins Hall, which is where our wrestling room was. He had a locker in their locker room.
We had a locker in a fencing room. He had a locker in a football room.
I heard he had a locker somewhere where the swim team was.
15, 16 sports. I mean, that's insane. He's everywhere.
This guy was a predator, and he was a sociopath, and I think a psychopath, and he was a demon. These guys were talking. He was leaning in. They could feel his breath on their genitals. They could see the top of his head. They were so confused. The guy comes in with a foot problem, and the guy's examining his penis. I mean,
yeah, there was always a full body exam.
He did the entire body check, checked our skin, because with wrestling, skin issues might keep you off the wrestling mat because they're contagious. He checked under our arms, checked our vitals.
And then he tells me to turn the lights off.
And he got down on a stool and tapped the side of your legs and say, "All right, drop them."
And it's dark. Can't even see anything, And I'm looking over at him, and he's got a light pen.
And I'm standing there, looking down at a man who has a flashlight in his mouth at my drawing level, and I'm seeing the top of his head. It's just really weird.
And from that point, he would grab your penis, and he's moving it around. I was speechless.
The entire time, you're just sitting there trying to talk yourself out of getting an erection. I'm not gonna lie.
Like, that is the one thing you're just I am not now you're questioning your sexuality, or so you're like, what is that? And he just would catch you right before you say something. He said, "I'm just being thorough."
So
exactly.
That would be like, for us ladies, going to the gynecologist every single week of our lives. Like,
having an internal.
You walk in and you say, like, oh, I stubbed my toe during the match. And Dr. Strauss would be like, okay, take off all your clothes. And then he would touch their dick and balls with his hands without gloves for
No
a
gloves.
stubbed toe or an elbow that they knocked around. This guy was and there was also rape involved in this as well, not necessarily from what we heard from the documentary, like during the exams, but there were a couple men that said that they had gone to his home and that Dr. Strauss had raped them.
The first guy that talked, and of course I don't have the name written down.
Richie?
Really
Is it
Richie.
Yeah.
So Richie talks about, wanting to model, and he's taking pictures. And, the guy's like, I just believed in the system. And then he says that later on, they're talking to him about, like, do you want money? And he says, yeah, there's something has to hurt. There has been no consequence that has hurt OSU enough, and they deserve something, because what are they going to get? What are they going to get? An apology?
Accountability is necessary.
People ask, well, do you want money out of this? Yeah, you know what, I do. And I'll tell you why. You punish somebody, you give them a $5 fine and say, don't do it again. They're going to come back, that's $5, that's fine, here's $5, and they're going to do it again. You hit them where it counts, and that's the money that they have to shell out because they did not protect the athletes they were supposed to protect when they brought them here to compete for them. So yes, I want them to pay out.
Well,
So,
and these,
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
and one
I
more
just
thing
get so frustrated that
So
I
do
want to
I.
be like, and this, and this, and
Well,
this.
you should. The other one, and I'll mention, and then I'm going to stop talking, is the Canadian hockey player. I felt for him. I wanted to hug him and tell him I'm so sorry, even though there's nothing I could have done. But that guy, when he went in for this, he was a regular student. He got kicked off the hockey team. And they told him, and then he told everybody he wasn't good enough. And then he had like a cold and he went to Dr. Strauss. Dr. Strauss gives him a medicine that he says it's going to take away from it, take away the pain. And then, all of a sudden, Dr. Strauss is driving him home. And then he said, and then he raped me. And then they had like maybe a minute long, camera hold on his face.
I woke up in the morning and so I was trying to process it, like what trying to remember the night, like how did we get here? How did we get to this? And yeah, I was in fucking shock. Like I was and who are you gonna tell? Like who am I gonna tell?
It's devastating. It's devastating. Yeah. These are men that are athletes that were competing to make their school better.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say.
I think that they were, they were definitely afraid to say anything because they would lose their scholarships. I think that was something. So it is like, power being held over their heads. It would be their voice against Dr. Strauss's voice, who has been at the university for many, many years. He was on Nightline talking about OSU like he was a quote unquote respected doctor.
After people hear these stories, there's a lot of guys that talk to us about, oh, I would have beat him up, or I would have done this, I would have done that.
What do you mean he touched you? Why don't you just whip his ass?
The way Strauss did it, this man never had a nurse or another trainer in that office when we were in there one-on-one. Never. So it was always his word against your word. Yeah, I could have smacked him upside the head, and then what would have happened?
Imagine I'm walking out and then this old white man is knocked out in there. And this guy has been, mind you, been around this university since 1979. So what am I going to do? What they're going to do is they're going to kick me out of school.
He'd have his job and he'd still be doing what he's doing, and I'd be out of my scholarship. We had so much to lose.
I wasn't rich, I wasn't blessed with a ton of money, so the scholarship was critical. We were powerless.
Okay, so with this said, like sometimes we don't let a good doctor into the conversation until later. I really feel we need to bring our fantastic doctor,
what a great
Dr.
segue,
John Mayer, into the conversation, because he really will be able to talk about like the psychological aspects of the kids, because they were boys at the time that this happened, but also about how Dr. Strauss could do this for so many years. And we have to say too, this all came about because of the Larry Nassar case with the female gymnast. So, believe women, but also believe men. Hello, Dr. John Mayer.
John is a man.
Bring your goodness
Thank
into
you.
this.
Again, the
Bring your goodness.
green room door is opening and I'm coming in, and
Dori and I could never handle this as women alone. We need a man, don't you think?
What's interesting right off the bat as you say that, Stacey, is that I was sitting here listening to you and going, this is really a case of reverse sexism in a way. We talk about reverse racism, but as a man, you're exactly right. We don't hear about, the sexual abuse of men this much. And here this thing explodes. Explodes. The report from Ohio State estimated that there could have been as many as 2,800 victims over the years, 2,800 victims of this guy's abuse. And you talked about the rape, and there was a few people, they estimate 170 men raped. This is incredible, what this is all about. And, one of the other things that struck me right off the bat in watching this is I'm big on when I'm called into a case, or even if I see something in the media on a criminal case, I want to see a picture. I want to see what that perpetrator, that criminal looks like. And if look at this guy's picture, and for our audience, if you haven't seen this documentary, just to kind of embellish what we're talking about, even skip through it a little bit and see some of the pictures of not only the perpetrator, Dr. Strauss, but these men that Stacey was talking about. Just, and then I have to underline, incredible men. But back to Dr. Strauss, and look at him. He's got an inappropriate hairstyle, almost looks like Opie Taylor kind of hairstyle. A very kind of, what should I say, corn, what is it,
Corn-fed
kind of look, or corn something kind of look about him. Long, creepy fingers, and long, creepy, soft fingers. And of course, that what he was using to fondle all these men. And one victim even said, they were like soft, sweaty fingers on my genitals. I was like, this is so creepy. He just looks like a creepy guy. And he's in a system that's all about machoism. And you see these coaches, and you even see the administrators, and these are all men's men. And, how could this creepy little, Skeletor kind of guy be doing this on these athletes. But you made some great points about how these young men would fall right into it. And you both don't know this, so I'm going to reveal something to you here and now on our episode number 9, is that I grew up in this system. I was a very successful and recruited male athlete. And I've experienced some of this, not the abuse per se, but I have a couple of good stories about that. But this whole system of just going along with the flow and not complaining.
It almost felt like it was by design. And that made this all the more troubling. You know, we've always been proudly a Buckeye family. When I dropped my son off at a dorm at The Ohio State University when he was 18 years old, my first one to leave the nest, I cried after I left the dorm, but I thought, well, at least he's in good hands. He's at The Ohio State University. All of these men were dropped off at Ohio State. I want to know why this happened to them. How a sexual predator could have been allowed to be on campus for 20 years. How did it happen?
But another aspect of this that you didn't bring up, and I want to bring up, look at how he chose these victims. They made a point in the documentary that, you know, there was a lot of athletes that didn't get abused, but he was careful to choose who. Kids that were very, very successful, and I'll get to that in a second, how that buffers you from a lot of things. And they were usually from rural backgrounds, simple backgrounds. So they didn't have the life experience, let's say, like an urban athlete would have, who is more, pardon the expression, exposed to these kinds of issues as they grow up in a more urban atmosphere. So the choice of victims was very interesting. And so a lot of our audience is going to ask, why did these kids fall for this? Because as an athlete, especially when you're a good athlete, and again, I've experienced some of this in my own life, you're really buffered from a lot of life and reality. You're so concentrated on your sport and being good at your sport and excelling. You're not partying like the other kids. You're not drinking necessarily. You're not participating in sex orgies or a lot of the things that adolescent males get involved in. You're concentrating on your sport. So you don't realize these things. I, for example, as growing up as an athlete, I never drank. I didn't hang around people that drank. I had no interest in drinking. So all that teenage, let's get a 6-pack of beer for the weekend kind of thing, incredulous to me.
Dr. John, and correct me if I'm wrong. Even in an urban setting, like, or people who grew up in a more urban setting aren't going to be necessarily like around people, like masturbating in front of them and manipulating them. And, I think that a lot of this is that the men or the boys questioned their own sexuality as well. And that's why a lot of them didn't speak up. And I understand you're talking about like who he kind of targeted and who he didn't target. But I said before, I think a lot of it also was about those that, like you had said too, that maybe don't, we talked about like don't have the money. Like they just didn't have, they relied on scholarships. So he kind of went after those that were in a like almost a powerless type of situation. Yes, they were fantastic wrestlers or fantastic fencers or, whatnot, but he still, like, he did it, like you said, there were like thousands of people that he possibly did this to.
You're exactly right. It's what we don't realize is the sheltering of these young men. And again, whether urban or rural environment. And like I was saying in my story, I grew up in the inner city of Chicago. And yeah, I was sheltered from a lot of things because I was an athlete.
So I wanted to comment on two of the things you've said. The first thing is that you were kind of talking about the character of Dr. Strauss and also Larry Nassar. We were kind of doing a parallel. They're very similar in their demeanor. There's a shyness and probably a humble quality. And I don't know, I've heard Larry Nassar talk. I don't think I've ever heard Richard Strauss talk. But there's this sort of nerdy, like boy next door, or, I'm very like, down to earth, like this gray hair, this sweet face, and it's unassuming. It's not like a giant guy. You know what I mean? And so that's scary.
Yeah, and let me say about that, and this is going to sound kind of macho guyish, but you look upon those kind of guys, and why do they do these kinds of things? Well, maybe they're not getting it in the traditional ways that a guy gets. You date somebody, you maybe serial date, and maybe you have 2 or 3 girlfriends on the side, etc., and you're getting your needs met. These guys are inept at getting their needs met in a conventional way.
Right. And that makes sense. I mean, you think, why didn't he just get a boyfriend and then just get 50 boyfriends, that are of consenting age? But that's the disorder. That's the disease.
That's the deficit right there. They don't
have the
social skills in order to do that, to do the normal things of seducing someone and dating someone. And there's nothing wrong with that word, by the way, seducing someone. That's what we do.
Right, because it's normal. I mean, he obviously that's the problem, is that he could only do it in that capacity, in that way. That's how he got off. But the thing that sucks the most about the whole thing is the statute of limitations idea, where these guys over and over and over were talking to whoever they could, to Russ, that's their coach, that's their dad, basically. The guy, I mean, I would be so embarrassed, and I would actually disappear from society and change my name if I was one of those people that denied it and then still is denying it. That's almost as bad as Dr. Strauss. So the statute of limitations,
So many of these heroic victims that were on, talked about that, is that how could these people live with that?
In public, OSU expresses contrition.
We acknowledge the university's failures during Strauss's time at Ohio State.
But this was manipulation, lying, and deceit. Behind the scenes, they begin fighting us tooth and nail. Ohio State, while professing to do the right thing, actually moved to dismiss the entire case on statute of limitations grounds. Under Ohio law, you have 2 years to bring a lawsuit. It happened more than 2 years ago, therefore you're out of luck. And that's OSU's defense. Basically, we were so successful in hiding Dr. Strauss's abuse that it's too late for you now to sue us.
And this coach, and let's give him his last name so people identify him, this Russ Hellickson, who is this, macho, I'm like your surrogate father coach, I'll take care of you, etc., and eventually turns his back on all these young men. You're right. How can this individual just live with the fact that all these players were being abused? And again, they weren't second string, third string players. These were superstar players. These were incredible champions.
I think we also have to say, too, that this had been going on for many, many, many years. And the one to really bring it to everybody's attention was a woman. It was the female fencing coach who brought it up. So there is a male toxicity issue with covering up this abuse against boys, against men. Dr. John, what do you kind of think about that a woman was the one who stepped up to talk about it, and all the men, Russ had Jim Jordan, who was the assistant coach as well, we think knew about all of this. They made comments about Dr. Strauss and, oh, that's him. That's him. He's a masturbator in the shower with other. Why do you think it was that none of the men stepped up, none of the men coaches stepped up to talk about this?
Well, like so many things in life, this is multi-determined, but let me throw out a couple of things and then also tell you a little vignette of my own personal experience as an athlete, which pertains. But getting back to the specific answer is that, well, we have a socialization as men that you don't rock the boat. You do what you're supposed to do. You're soldiers, you're tough, you just put up with things. You have the whole reputation of Ohio State University sports. We don't want to disrupt the successful program and take away from all the success we have. This is Ohio State University. That I think it's said in the documentary, they have the largest sports budget of any college in the country. That means the world. Incredible amounts of money and power that you don't want to rock that boat. Let me tell you my little vignette. It'll take just a couple seconds. I was a very successful high school athlete. My football coach was also our counselor at school, which was so inappropriate. No training to be a counselor, etc. But they put him there so that he wouldn't have to teach classes, etc., and he could watch football films all day. So I'm a recruited athlete, but I also was realistic as a junior in high school and said, if I don't get an athletic scholarship, which I ended up getting, I better check out some colleges and some schools as to where I want to go and apply. I knocked on his door. This is our college counselor. We had one counselor for a high school senior class of I think it was about 350 kids. Long story short, I knock on his door. He's sitting there watching football films with a bottle of Jack Daniels in the middle of the day. This is not after school, which doesn't even make it right. And I said, hey, coach, where are the college catalogs? He was incredulous. Oh, I think they're on a shelf somewhere over there. And I had to fend for myself, etc. But I did go to a authority, I forget, it was the dean or somebody, and I said, do you know Coach X? He's long past dead, but I still won't mention his name. Is drinking Jack Daniels and watching football films in the middle of the day. And again, you get that same response. Oh yeah, that's coach, whatever, he's here to coach football. And we were a successul football team. So you don't rock the boat.
That's exactly right.
Question. Hey, John, what was your, I know you played football. What position did you play?
I was a tight end.
Of course you were. Well, how apropos for this segment?
Well,
yeah, you were a tight end.
6'3", and at the time I was, 210 pounds.
Did you play in college?
Pardon? I got a scholarship, but I never played one single down.
Can I ask a couple of questions? First of all, I want to point out the whistleblower woman fencing coach was the first female to coach any NCAA sport, I think, at that time. I think. So don't quote me on that. I think I just read that. Her name is Charlotte Remenyick. Remenyick. Okay, so I just wanted to say that. I'm going to say two things. So I want to get to the statute of limitations situation, which is a huge problem in our justice system. But the fact that Dr. quote unquote Strauss, I know he was a doctor and I know he was probably intelligent, died in 2005. And it was here. So here's my main question. He killed himself. And what was not satisfying for these athletes is that there was no regret. There was no, reconciliation of what he had done. It was more about his problem, so that was upsetting. But How do you, as a person who's been abused like this, who's been ignored, who feels like they're banging their head against a wall, that they have to prove it, there was no proof, how do you reconcile this kind of situation that literally ruins your life? Their lives were, they were athletes that could have been pro. He ruined children and for generations.
You said the key word, Stacey, is reconcile. You don't reconcile it. You lived the rest of your life in pain with this. And that's what came through with the documentary. These men, tough men, by the time they got to Ohio State, these kids accomplished things that are extremely difficult and shows their emotional and physical strength. And these men were ruined for the rest of their lives.
You run drills in practice and I having trouble remembering what the next thing was. I mean, I was a mess. I was focused. I mean, I was a machine coming here, and then the wheels came off.
There's another fight, Al Novakoski.
You've got no one to talk to because you don't know that you're the only one this is happening to. And it just continued to spiral. I was never the same person. I remember it was Sunday morning and I slept in. You don't sleep in, you don't miss practice. And I remember getting there and going like, oh my God, I'm in so much trouble. I went to the coach's office and said, look, I know I'm really sorry, you know. He said, you're done. So, what do you mean I'm done? He goes, you're nothing but a fucking cancer to this hockey team. And my whole body just kind of, he's just ended my dream. My whole world has just exploded. I didn't know what to say to him. And I got up and I left the rink and I never went back.
There's no amount of money. The one athlete said, yeah, I want some money because you know why? I want them to pay. I want them to hurt. But do you think that guy is going to be cured, or it's going to give him some, as you said, you know, restitution about this? He lives with this the rest of his life. And that's what's sad. We've talked about this in some other episodes where people who do this don't realize they're basically emotionally committing murder to these people. And
how do we think about documentaries that talk about this like years later, you know, like with like the Menendez brothers, this incident, and then years later they do a documentary and the justice system seems to be more apt to listen to these cases? Do we think, because I think they said that the ruling that Ohio State offered like 200 and something thousand per person who claimed that Dr. Strauss had abused them, which was the lowest amount of any university settling their cases. Do you think now, because this is a very recent documentary, do we think that possibly Ohio State will change anything, or that this could go higher in the court systems? I'm just asking, like, rhetorically, like, what do we kind of think about that?
I think that's, of course, a legal question. And I'm going to speculate here that I think there will be probably a higher settlement amount offered by Ohio State, because the athletes who were involved in that group litigation refused the $250,000 apiece settlement that they offered, which I think was something like $40 million or something. Again, it shows you the extent of how many people were abused. But anyway, and again, here's where I'm speculating. I think I've heard, again, working on criminal cases, but not from the legal perspective, there has been a movement, and maybe it's not so much the law anymore, about statute of limitations on sexual rape and sexual crimes. I think that has been lifted or extended. So I don't think it's as tight as it used to be. But I may be wrong, and that would be something to ask an attorney about.
Well, isn't it, isn't it kind of a great excuse for the justice system to say, well, it's too late. We don't want to deal with that, I mean, that's what it feels like.
Well, don't forget, that's what this is a very important point for our audience. The attorney that has been helping the athletes mentioned that. He said that defense of the statute of limitations is the coward's defense. You don't have anything else to go on, so you pull that out of your butt, as a last-ditch effort. He made it sound like these people are so culpable because they're using this defense. So you're exactly right, Stacey.
So think about the Larry Nassar thing, how when that happened and how it took them watching these women go up and give their stories to, in the courtroom, the stories of what happened to them, the bravery and it took. Think about when those guys were sitting in the room with the people on staff at OSU, and he just said OH and nobody said IO.
Yeah.
There's like a disconnect. What the school could have done, they could have just immediately got him out, moved, and then it would have been swift. We found one of our guys was abusing kids. We got rid of him. We got a new guy. Why isn't that better than what happened?
Oh, exactly right. In retrospect,
why?
That's exactly what the school should have done. I mean, I want to go back, and there's where the Jim Jordan culpability comes in. And I want to emphasize that. I thought it was very poignant that this referee, he was a referee. Referees are like mini gods to athletes and coaches. They control the game. They control the rules. So this is another incredulous aspect of this. Dr. Strauss had I don't want to say the balls, but he had the courage.
Say the balls, John.
Okay,
just say the balls.
The referee, after the game, after the matches were over, goes into, which referees do, they use the school showers and they refresh themselves, get dressed and go. This referee is in the shower. Who comes strolling in? Our good old Dr. Strauss, and touches the referee, makes a move on the referee, not just verbally, but physically touches him. And the referee just, did what, we would hope the students would have done, which is say, get out of here. Don't do that.
And he also kept silent. He didn't tell anybody about it.
Dori, he didn't. He went up. He was.
Oh, he told Russ. He told the coach and Jim Jordan, and they said that's. Yeah.
And Jim Jordan on the way out of the university.
Locker room.
The locker room. That's when Jim Jordan said.
They said that's Strauss.
Oh, that's
That's
Strauss.
He's like that. Jim Jordan knew.
Of course he did. But I think what I was saying is that the referee said, because he got emotional as well when he was telling the story, that he didn't really pursue it to tell his family, his friends about it. Just like the hockey player as well. And then we have also that gentleman, and I forget his name, who is a non-athlete, who just went in, had to go to the doctor, saw Dr. Strauss, and Dr. Strauss is giving him a full exam when the kid had, I don't remember, was he had the flu or something so minor?
He had the doctor. Let me clarify, excuse me for interrupting, Dori, but Stephen Snyder Hill, I think it's very important to call him out and praise him because he was a non-athlete and he kind of started the ball on exposing all of this stuff. He was a normal student, went in because he had a lump on his chest. And immediately Dr. Strauss says, disrobe, pull down your underwear, and he gives them a penis exam or whatever. He's manipulating them.
Is he even doing an exam, or is it just his own version of touching somebody? Is there anything clinical about what he's doing? No, because you don't. I mean, I'm not a guy.
You don't fondle somebody's penis for any reason unless there's some STD you're concerned about, or.
And speaking of that, somebody ejaculated during one of them, and can you imagine the humiliation of feeling that way? Because I mean that, and for anybody not to listen to that is just, it's awful. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and how confused that individual was because he ejaculated like, who am I? What am I?
Yeah, what am I? Like what Dori was saying in the beginning. They were questioning their sexuality. It's uncomfortable. How are you going to tell your parents this? Again, we have to remember it was the 90s. It wasn't the same as it is now. Now, doesn't mean it, doesn't mean anybody would do anything now about it. It could be covered up again, but it just seems like in the 90s, people weren't out, people weren't, there wasn't a lot of talk about abuse and assault and all that stuff. And I think that contributed a lot to it.
And there's something that popped in my head I want to say, and I want to get it out into our broadcast here. The cover-up. Something just smells. Something really smells about this cover-up. For example, this Dr. Grace, who is the head of student health services, and with this Stephen Snyder Hill, goes to Dr. Grace to complain and says, this is not right. Dr. Grace not only covers it up, but puts in a letter, a lie, that he had no idea any of this was ever going on. It's never been reported before. And
not one person has ever made a complaint, and that was a blatant lie.
Blatant lie. So what smells about this? Why does a guy like Strauss have this, candy store, pot candy, candy store of opportunity at this university? Something smells here.
He's also pushing steroids.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that.
Boys.
Oh yeah, and yet was a leading,
as my dad would say, steroids.
Yeah. Who's a physician, by the way.
Can I mention one thing before you get into that? I wanted to mention Al Novikowski. He was the Canadian hockey player. He is a hockey player, but he's the one who was just a big star and a huge scholarship. Al Novikowski. I love this man. I feel for him. He was so vulnerable and honest in that moment. So anyway,
and he's the one that was raped. He was the one that came out to rape. Again, there was 170 suspected rape victims, but he was the one in a documentary that detailed it. Rape.
Can you imagine going from not telling anybody to then doing it on a TV show for the whole world to see?
This is a terrible coincidence and juxtaposition, but we're joined by
our penis dog.
The penis dog,
It's Bosch, everybody. Bosch is going to get adopted, so this may be the last time that my co-hosts.
Penis dog will live with us forever.
But his penis is better, you guys. His penis
he got the
is
operation.
Better.
Can we get a facial of Bosch?
We're all taking pictures of Bosch.
Great.
He's
got
a
it.
handsome
Oh my God,
man.
is he cute?
Bosch, baby.
But
it actually is kind of serendipitous with this topic that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Not to make light of this topic,
not at all.
But
and there's none.
Penis to penis. I mean,
dust to dust.
Dust to dust. Thank you, Stacey. That should be on that should be our tagline for Pod Candy. Penis to penis, dust to dust, especially for this episode. Okay.
For sure. And also, John, I was going to mention to you that you kept saying something smells, and I just wanted to say something's rotten in the state of Denmark.
Yeah.
Just for a little theatrical reference.
Well, I have a theory.
But anyway, go on. Yeah. What's your theory?
Here's my bold theory. I wonder if, there's some kind of gay little club going on with some of these administrators and Dr. Strauss. Dr. Strauss gets the position and keeps the position because he's got a couple of boyfriends in the administration. And I don't want to cast aspersions on who or why or when, but I just had a theory.
There's something very gay about it.
Yeah, why would this guy be retained? You could get
Why?
You could get thousands of doctors who would love a cushy job like being a physician for a major university. That would be an ultimate for a lot of male doctors, especially male doctors who are athletes. You would die for that position. Why does this creepy guy get retained?
Not only just retained, but like what? I haven't researched this. Stacey, you're the big researcher. Like, has he accomplished anything? I know he was on Nightline talking about steroids, and then he was actually pushing steroids. So he wrote a book on steroids. Yeah, John.
That's it. He when you say accomplished anything, this is so, the hypocrisy of this is so amazing. He was writing articles and getting published articles on the negativity of steroids and the danger of steroids, and yet he was in charge of the steroid program at Ohio State University. It's like
he's actually injecting these athletes with they didn't. So here's the thing.
He called them vitamins.
Right. It's allegedly because they all said like B12 didn't feel like what they were being injected with. So technically we don't know for sure, but allegedly he was also injecting them and pushing steroids on them.
Multiple sources told me they got steroids from Dr. Strauss, and multiple sources told me that he was distributing steroids. I talked to one former trainer. One of his jobs was distributing the steroids to the athletes.
They brought us in to do B12 shots, they said. I mean, I'd done B12 shots before, but this was different. This was right before Big Tens and Nationals. I remember they gave us a pretty big shot. They said it was B12, but I don't think it was B12. I thought it might have been some testosterone.
Did it make you feel any different?
I felt good. I felt real good. I just felt energy and just recovery was quicker. I don't think B12 does that for you.
The point you were making is, why is this doctor still at the university, a top-notch university for 20 plus years, when people are making complaints about him? How does he
smells here?
Something's rotten at OSU.
Didn't anybody shadow him or come into the room ever, or didn't he say that didn't he say the nurse would step out when he would do examinations? Everybody knew, and they all dismissed it with, that's just Strauss. A thought terminating cliche ends the conversation. There's nothing you can say back.
Yeah.
Because no one is listening. It's like, boom, there's the
I don't want to make the comparison, but I just thought of this, and this may be totally out of craziness, but to me it would almost be like, what if my gynecologist started putting dildos up me, as I'm in the they serve no purpose at all,
right?
And they're just shoving things. I would be like, what the F is going on? And then if I broach it with somebody else, one would think that, oh, this is out of the realm of possibility. We've got to look into this. The quote from the coach is, oh, that's just Strauss. That in itself should have led to a huge investigation.
Yeah. I agree with you. And again, we there's a spidey sense that comes up when you're something doesn't feel right. All these guys had the spidey sense. They just didn't know what to do. I'm trying to picture my child, either child, in a room with somebody, not knowing, and then feeling really weird to walk out into the hall where there's a line of guys, and they all know. It's so uncomfortable for these macho guys, back to what John said, these macho athletic guys who are at the top of their game, and they're feeling like shit. They're being taken down. And then I thought of something. the theory could be that he was trying to destroy the athletes.
Well, that's an interesting theory as well. I want to get back to that hero, Nowakowski, the Canadian hockey player. When you said he was kicked off the hockey team, that's exactly right. But it was because after one of the fondling episodes from Dr. Strauss, he couldn't live with himself and he started to miss practice. And he was a superstar hockey player coming into Ohio State. He started to miss practices and miss classes, etc. And he goes back to his coach, and the coach says, "You're a cancer to this program." And so he gets kicked off the team. But it was after the visit he had with Dr. Strauss that started him to spiral down. And
yeah, another one also on the scholarship. You lose your scholarship, you lose money. So first he's off the team, then he can't go to school anymore.
Yeah.
So maybe, but how evil would that be? Like, Stacey, with your theory about that, like, just if that is the case, that this one guy, which I hope that wasn't the case, that he really, truly just wanted to destroy I think the theory of the fact that, like you were saying, that, like the Nassers, the Strausses of the world, they are like these nerdy guys who probably can't get it themselves. So they're in a position of power and they're going to do everything that they can to, treat these women and men like.
Well, and let's turn the tables and talk about why an individual like this can exist, this Dr. Strauss, and we talked about how he can exist within a system, my theory being he had something on somebody or was the lover of somebody in high places that kept him into this job. But also, what's wrong with this guy? There is a medical condition that I feel that is wrong with this guy. He's a sick individual. I mean, we haven't even talked about how, as a man, I can't even imagine how much sex that is that you're getting. He was constantly in these shower rooms. That's
every day.
That's an everyday thing. I was just going to say
in
multiple sports,
multiple showers, the hockey team, the basketball team, the football team, the fencing
Everybody
team.
knows. Everybody knows that you don't mingle with the people the students.
But I want to get back to that point that maybe you ladies don't realize, because you can just orgasm and orgasm and orgasm.
Oh yeah, uh-huh.
I mean, one would hope, but
one would hope
who's doing that?
I'm orgasming right now. I mean,
but we men, we have about one chance at this, and then we're done for a long period of time. How does this guy get so much sex and so much? What is wrong? Because there's something probably neurologically and psychologically wrong with him. So and remember, I'm not diagnosing. But I have
diagnosis,
again,
just
a
thoughts.
theory of what's wrong with this guy. And these are two very serious conditions. One purely medical and neurological, and the other one is a psychiatric diagnosis. And the first one, the medical diagnosis, is compulsive sexual behavior disorder, which is recognized by medicine as a disorder that you can't get enough. There's literally, we're finding that in the temporal lobe of the brain, there is an abnormality that makes you want more and more and more and more sex, and able to do it as well, by the way. Now, the psychiatric diagnosis, I think, is clear. Again, this is a guess. I'm not diagnosing over the media. And that would be a borderline personality disorder, because it has all the elements of there's no contrition, there's no conscience, there's, just no feeling no empathy for another person. The absolutely kind of in and out of reality of this guy, all fits, borderline personality.
I'd like to kind of see a documentary on Strauss and Nasser. I'm linking them both together because they're both kind of the same person.
Yeah, let's ship them. You know how the kids say that now?
Yeah,
let's ship Strauss and Nasser are going to be shipped.
Oh,
That
I
means
didn't know
they're
that phrase.
Coupled.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
but I'm going to be on the lookout for the shipping. I'm going to be on the lookout for a documentary of the shipping.
I have a question for Dr. Mayer. So I need to know the difference because I keep saying sociopathic about certain things. What is the difference between sociopathic and borderline personality disorder?
It's a fine line. I mean, borderline personality disorder is a much serious condition because it has other symptoms along with sociopathic behavior. Sociopathic behavior has no regard for social rules and no understanding of social rules. And the borderline personality certainly has that, but also has other things like lack of empathy. They move in and out of their own realities, et cetera, inability to make relationships, escalation of emotion. We saw that in Strauss too at one hearing, a victim is testifying and he bangs on the table, "You're trying to ruin my reputation." Again, in all retrospect, if I was that athlete, I'd say, "Yeah, you're damn right. I'm trying to ruin your reputation because you're an evil freaking criminal." It's like, of course. So that's the difference, Stacey.
I really did that. Those two things to me are hard to separate. And then, dare I say this, just like becoming a priest, if you have the tendency to want to be around younger kids, or becoming, doing something where you can hide behind the profession so that you can do what you need to do, hiding behind the job, the profession. Why do we, there's one glaring example now too. I don't have to even mention names. Like, why do we allow this? And why can't we come to Jesus with everything and be like honest? Why all the covering?
And that's what I get at my theory of how this gets perpetrated. How and why is because they were also getting something out of this. You get something, the institution or in this case, the school or the job, there's a benefit they're getting by having this person doing it, which in their immoral minds supersedes what this guy is doing. I can't imagine what they felt that they were getting out of Strauss from a medical point of view, financial point of view. So what was it? It's got to be some kind of relational thing. He had either something on somebody or was something with somebody that continued to have him in this position. It's just incredible. And by the way, another fact the audience should know. So he does get removed from being the medical director of the student health services, but they keep him on as a professor and then make him, when he retires, emeritus, which, by the way, if people don't know that, look it up. It's like being knighted.
It's a huge honor. It's a huge honor. He's immortalized, basically.
And they knew he was a pedophile. It's like,
I mean, unbelievable.
How does he then get to the point? How does he get to the point then of killing himself? He has no remorse or regret.
This is exactly Dori, that is the best question, because how does that happen?
So what does it, he's feeling like, I guess he's sore or ill or whatever, but he's only 70 something years old. He's caused so much trauma all around, but it's not the remorse that he wants to kill himself. It's that he's feeling the pain, like Stacey said initially. John?
Yeah,
tell us.
That's part of that borderline personality theory I have, that it's about, that's the other thing about borderlines. It's about me. It's all me. There's no sense of the other person in their lives, the other. It's that was the classic definition of the borderline personality disorder. And I want to emphasize and jump on that point, Dori, is that the medical reports about the suicide were that he did it because he was in so much pain. He must have some kind of physical condition going on. And one of our hero athletes, he said, wow, he had no contrition of what he did. He didn't kill himself because of us and what he did. He killed himself because of him, something he was going through.
He was in pain. He was in pain. No regard for the thousands of people who were in pain, and then their families with all that trauma that's in them forever now.
And another thing I'll say before we wrap up is that as a lot of these documentaries, I'm unsatisfied with, I want to know the development of this guy, what his childhood was like, what his family life was like.
That's why I said we need to see a documentary on Dr. Strauss. Now I want to go find a documentary just on him.
And Dori, I'm
Googling it.
I did a little search, and there's nothing really on his.
I have to say, though, as we are wrapping up now, for our next episode, I don't think I can go through something like this again for a while. I need to do a lighthearted watch. So for the next time, we got to come up with something that's more fun.
But it'll be juicy as always. We'll really dig into it.
Knowing that we are going to maybe have somebody do a documentary on Richard Strauss. Maybe, and Larry Nasser, there is a prominent, this is so sad, Richard Strauss, the composer, the German composer, it's the same name. So you can't find shit on this doctor because it's all about Richard Strauss, the real one.
And they kept showing the same photo. He only had one photo. Like
it was that milky white with the white hair, and that. Just tell me he's not a Jew, Dori. Is he a Jew?
Oh my gosh. I don't even want to go there, Stacey.
I tried to look it up. I tried to look it up, but I can't live with another Jew doing something
I think we need to end on that because even the thought of that is going to
Jew or not Jew? Jew or not Jew?
Let's hope not. That's all I can say.
It sounds like a new game show that's a spinoff from our program, the new game show, Jew or not Jew.
I'm sure John Mayer didn't think of this, but I think of it all the time. I'm looking at the name. I'm like, and then I asked my mom, is Richard Strauss a Jew? She goes, it could go either way. But listen, in wrapping this up, I want to say that this was one of the worst stories I've ever heard. And it was painful to listen to and to watch, and it was sad, and I cried, and I know you guys felt the same way. And I just want to say that I respect and appreciate these guys so much. And if there's anything that I could do for them, I would. So I'm just putting out my hand. I'm extending my hand out to people that, I just feel for them, and I want.
Well, we're doing a lot, Stacey, by telling this story, I want to wrap up and say something at the end too, which is important. And you said it at the beginning before I joined. You're sending a child off to college. Mm-hmm. And what we don't sometimes acknowledge is how difficult it is for parents to take your child, your precious child, and you're going to have them live somewhere else and in the protection, hopefully, of other adults. And that's what was so devastating to me in this. You go to college and you expect at the very least what they should be doing is housing you, feeding you, protecting you while you're there. And that's what we want as parents. Parents, communicate with your children, be open about it, ask them, what's going on. Instill in them, you want to know if there's some painful things or if there's some things that are difficult to handle. Please develop the relationship in your children, or they can confide in you with these things. Because that was one of the things that was so troubling about all these men, is that none of them felt that they could have told anybody. develop the relationship in your children where they will confide in you and are eager to confide in you. So please.
Those are good words. Stacey, John, great final thoughts. Again, next time, I need to look for something goofy.
Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to join us next time when we'll be diving into another cult or crime. Our theme music is written and performed by Midnight Current. Check out more of their work on SoundCloud. For more about us and to catch up on every episode of Pod Candy, head over to podcandypodcast.com. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.
Pod Candy!